Well, tonight we're going to talk about and have a Bible study. We're talking about the book of Revelation, part 7. The book of Revelation, part 7. Last time we talked about, part 6 was about the first angel in Revelation 14. We talked about the first angel. The subtitle to this, even though the official title is Book of Revelation, part 7, the subtitle is The Second Angel of Revelation 14. So let's turn to Revelation 14. And this verse there's only one verse to this section here in Revelation 14. Of course, there's a whole lot about this subject throughout the Bible, but this verse only has one little verse in verse 8. Revelation 14, verse 8. We're coming to the second angel in this verse. Remember, the last time, the first angel preaches the gospel to the whole world, to everyone. And so it's okay if people want to do their best to preach gospel and preach truth, or certainly, hopefully, we concentrate on reflecting truth by our example. But no human being is going to do, the two witnesses are going to do a good job, but just in case the two witnesses miss someone, if people aren't watching what's happening when those two witnesses come, this angel is going to preach the gospel to every nation, every tribe, every tongue, to all people. That gospel is going to be preached. But that's the first angel. The second angel is found in verse 8, and this is what we're talking about tonight. And another angel follows, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she's made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So this angel announces the fall of Babylon. Now again, we could just say that could be the end of it. This angel announces it. But what we like to get into talking about a little bit about Babylon. Who is Babylon? Because that's always interesting speculation there. And will I speculate tonight? Well, I'll share some ideas about it. I'm not going to give any concrete confirmation of who Babylon is. But the fact is Babylon, it's important to see who Babylon is, to try to figure out who Babylon is. And then to watch it go down. And as it goes down, we want to go up, meaning we want to have contact with God. We want to stay connected to God. Now, in the Bible, the Greek and Hebrew for the word, when you look up the word Babylon, the Hebrew word actually has two Hebrew words. I'm not even sure what the difference is, to be honest, because when you look up in the Hebrew Bible the word Babel, it has numbers 894 and 895. They have the exact same definition. Each is a noun. Both of them talk about the gate of God, because the Hebrew means the gate of God. The one example, the first one, 894, which is the primary one, it's found 249 times as Babylon, and then has a few other little offshoots. But then the one 895 is still Babylon 25 times, but it's mostly found in Ezra and Daniel. And I'm sure there's a good reason why Ezra and Daniel use that word, which seems like a variation of some kind. But I didn't take the time to look into that. But I wanted, again, to look to see what the Bible says about Babylon. And it's the same word, Babylon, for Babel, like the Tower of Babel. It's the same word. Now, the Greek also it's a different Greek word, but it also means gate of God. It also means gate of God. And it's found 12 times in the New Testament. 6 of those are in the book of Revelation, and we will end the study by talking about those 6 in the book of Revelation. So anyway, that's what the Bible talks about. It's interesting to study. Right now I'm having some really interesting studies for different presentations I'm giving and different articles I'm doing. For Eye in the World, I'm doing something for Eye in the World. You'll see how it connects here. I'm putting an article in Eye in the World that talks about the Muslim view by certain Muslims. Not all Muslims think the same thing. Not all Muslims teach the same thing. But some of the Muslim historians, and you may have known this already, I've never focused on this. They say that the idea of the Jewish people having 2 temples in Jerusalem is a myth. It never happened. And of course, again, that's probably well known by people who study, but because my study has been primarily the Bible and religious information, I was never aware of those theories. And so I've been studying that, and I find it interesting. It would be interesting if you're having a debate. If you're having a real debate, you want to prepare for both sides. But I'm just finding it interesting that they actually say that Solomon's temple never existed. And they just mentioned that, and they have their reasons, they have their what they call proof. I don't agree with that, but I find it interesting to at least see what they say. The point is, when you try to get all sides to an issue, you try to get both sides to an issue, you're surprised sometimes. So I point that out because, again, when people talk about Babylon, it's amazing what some of the non-religious people say about Babylon. The same principle. They will say, some of the non-religious secular history I read, say that the only reason Babylon has a bad name is because of the Bible. That's what some of them will say. They'll quote that. The only reason Babylon has a bad name is because of the Bible. Yet there are other sources that will talk about the archaeology and history that would agree with the Bible. The point I'm making is I've just been a little surprised when I've been reading a little bit outside the box about both Babylon and the temple, and to see what some of the people actually say, which makes it interesting for people who only read one side. And if they believe that only one side, I mean, there are people out there, not people I run into believe in the temple. People I run into believe in my view of the historical events of Babylon. But I'm just telling you, maybe you've already known that, maybe you've already read all sorts of things about that. I had not, and so I found it interesting. Well, I'd like to read from some excerpts from the Holman Bible Dictionary. And since it's a Bible dictionary, it would have the traditional Church of God view of Babylon, or any religious view. It has probably a typical Baptist view of Babylon. So let's read some excerpts. I'm going to read some excerpts to you. They're from pages 141 to 144. The first segment talks about a little background about Babylon. Babylon was a city-state in southern Mesopotamia during Old Testament times, which eventually became a large empire that absorbed the nation of Judah and destroyed Jerusalem. The city of Babylon was founded in unknown antiquity on the river Euphrates, about 50 miles south of modern Baghdad. The English names Babylon and Babel, found in Genesis 10 and Genesis 11, are translated from the same Hebrew word Babel. So they came from the same word. The next thing I want to mention, by the way, when you look at the history of this, you're going to see that at one point, Babylon was the little brother, Babylon was the victim. Babylon was the victim. This is the history of all people. Babylon was the victim. They were pushed around. Then, in their point of history, they became the aggressor. And then they really did a number on Israel. They did on Judah. They did a great. They hurt Judah a lot of difficulty. And then at the end of their time, they became the victim again. But isn't that all nations? And by the way, it makes me think: is the United States coming to the point now that we have been the successful one? We have been the predominant one. Are we going to keep going down enough that we will no longer be the top dog, and we will then have to deal with people abusing us? So again, that runs its course. Countries run their course, and it makes you wonder what is the future of America. Of course, as individuals, we want to be close to God. As a family, we want to be close to God. As a congregation, we want to be close to God, and I'd like to see us as a nation get close to God. The next segment talks about, again, Babylon's dealing with Assyria, just very briefly. During the period of the Assyrian Empire, Babylon was dominated by this warlike neighbor to the north. Assyrian domination died when the king in 627 BC, but in 612, with the help of the Medes, the Babylonians sacked the Assyrian capital of Nineveh. So early in their history, they were being pushed around by Assyria, but in 612, with the help of the Medes, they did conquer Nineveh. They were no longer the little kid on the block. They actually were the bullies and the strong one. The next segment's a little longer, some of the history. In 604 and 603 BC, Nebuchadnezzar II, which is around 605 to 562 BC, he was the king of Babylon. He campaigned along the Palestinian coast. At this time, Jehoiakim, who was the king of Judah, became an unwilling vassal of Babylon. A Babylonian defeat at the border of Egypt in 601 probably encouraged Jehoiakim to rebel. Breaking from the reading, when he saw Babylon show weakness, he tried to attack, and it did not go very well. Back to the reading. For 2 years, Judah was harassed by Babylonian vassals, also found in 2 Kings 24. Then in December of 598 BC, Nebuchadnezzar marched on Jerusalem. Jehoiakim died that same month, and his son Jehoiachin surrendered the city to the Babylonians on March 16, 597 BC. Nebuchadnezzar appointed Zedekiah over Judah against the protest of Jeremiah, but with the promises of Egyptian aid. Zedekiah revolted against Babylon in 589 BC. In the resultant Babylonian campaign, Judah was ravaged and Jerusalem was besieged. The city fell in August 587 BC. Zedekiah was captured, Jerusalem was burned, and the temple destroyed. And that's found in many places in Isaiah and Jeremiah. Many more Judeans were taken to their exile in Babylonia, and that's also found in Kings and Jeremiah. So again, you read about that when Babylon laid siege to Judah and took people into captivity, killed a lot of people. So that's part of the history. Then, and this is a real short segment. In 539 BC, the Persian Cyrus II, who's also called Cyrus the Great, entered Babylon without a fight. So in other words, what happened then is when the Persians overtook Babylon, then they became weak again. They became weak. So that's just a little history, just a very brief history showing they came in and had to deal with the tough Assyrians. They were able to deal with them. Then they made hay over the Judah and caused a lot of damage. And finally, the Persians put them in their place. So I can ask the question, what should be our focus concerning Babylon? I just gave that little history. What's our focus? Again, reading from the Holman Bible Dictionary. Babylon, the metropolis, like the Tower of Babel, became symbolic of man's decadence and God's judgment. Babylonian religion is the best-known variant of a complex and highly polytheistic system of belief common throughout Mesopotamia. Of the thousands of recognized gods, only about 20 were important in actual practice. Stop from the reading then. So you find here that they had their false gods. They had thousands of false gods, and they had 20 main ones. So let's look at a few scriptures about Babylon's false gods. Let's look at a few scriptures about that. Let's look at Isaiah chapter 46, verse 1. Again, we're talking about Babylon, their false gods, why God took them down, why they were no longer blessed. We see in Isaiah chapter 46, verse 1, it says, Bel bows down, Nebo stoops. Their idols were on the beast and on the cattle. You say, what's all that about, Dave? Where the word Bel is the equivalent, the Canaanite, that means that's the version of Baal. When you see the word Bel there, that's like from other nations, they would call someone Baal. Of course, you know about Baal worship, and you know how God does not like Baal worship. And so what it's saying is, here God is going to cause Babylon to be punished because their gods were not doing the right thing. Nebo is another one. Nebo is another name for a god. By the way, Nebo also talks about the Babylonian god of speech, writing, and water. I don't know why all those three are lumped together. Writing and speech seems to make sense. Water doesn't. Let's take a peek at Jeremiah 50, verse 2. Jeremiah 50, verse 2. We're going to look real quickly here about this because we actually have the name of one of the gods listed in the Bible. Only place it's listed in the Bible. Well, there's a variation list that we're going to see too. But Jeremiah 50, verse 2. Again, verse 1 says, the word that the Lord spoke against Babylon. There's a lot of warnings. Remember, I told you that there were at least 249 times Babylon's mentioned. And so many of those 249 times are talking about God's disappointment with Babylon and the punishment for Babylon. So these words are spoken against Babylon. Verse 2 says, declare among the nations, proclaim and set up a standard, proclaim and do not conceal it. Say, Babylon is taken, Bel is shamed. Remember, Bel is another way of saying Baal. And you know, God spoke a lot against Baal worship, and he also had the same feelings against Bel worship. But then here's the one word that's found in the Bible, Merodach, M-E-R-O-D-A-C-H. In fact, if in my margin, it'll have a little number there going down that says, this is a Babylonian god, sometimes spelled Marduk, M-A-R-D-U-K. This is the only time it's really mentioned this way. But again, God's saying Babylon's going to have to pay a consequence because they're worshiping Baal and they're worshiping these false gods. Now let's go to 2 Kings chapter 20. We're going to see something I'm going to use to show you how God did not like the false gods. And we're going to transition to the second part we're going to talk about. We're talking about the false gods first, and we're going to talk about Babylon lusting for money, lusting for wealth. And those are the two things that come into play, and they come into play when we do start reading in the book of Revelation. So 2 Kings 20, verses 13 through 15. Yes, this is the story where God was told Hezekiah he was going to die, and Hezekiah prayed and asked for healing, and God did heal him. That is true. That's in the earlier part of chapter 20. But 2 Kings 20, verse 13, Hezekiah was attentive to them. Oh, let's look at verse 12. Look at verse 12. At the time, Merodach Baladan, who was the son of Baladan was the king of Babylon, he sent letters and presents to Hezekiah because he heard that Hezekiah had been sick. So on the surface, it just says the king and the king's son sent letters to Hezekiah saying, we heard you were sick, we're sorry you were sick. It seems like a really nice gesture. But the word there, Merodach Baladan, means a son of Baladan. And it actually means God Marduk gave an heir. So in other words, even the name was idolatrous. The name was idolatrous. It's kind of like if you name your kid and you want to call him Nimrod. I mean, you can call your kid Nimrod if you want, but a lot of people are going to look at you calling someone Nimrod as, based on what I know in the Bible, why are you calling your kid Nimrod? Or if you want to name your kid Baal, that would be not a good thing to do in the sight of God. I mean, if you want to do that, I guess people can do what they want to do, but I'd be real careful about what kind of names we pick. So basically, we find out there that when kings would name it, they would name it saying, "This is my son. I worship Marduk, and this is my son." And I kind of want to give credit to that. So that's the interesting part there about false gods. But I'm going to continue on verses 13 through 18. So the 2 points we're talking about here, Babylon had false gods. And number 2, Babylon lusted. Let's show this example here. Verse 13, then Hezekiah was attentive to them and showed them all the treasures in his house. He showed the gold and silver and spices and precious ointments and all his armory, all that was found among his treasures. There was nothing in the house that he did not show. So Isaiah, verse 14, said, what did these men say, and where did they come from? And Hezekiah said, well, they came from Babylon. And Isaiah said, did they see your house? And Hezekiah said, yeah, they saw my house. They saw everything in my house. And again, there's a thing called boundaries. And while people are very trusting, people need to be really careful what they share about their life, what they share about what they show people. Again, your dear friends you trust, you can show them anything. You can talk to your dear friends about anything. But a stranger, if you show them where you keep your money, if they happen to be a crook, they could break in. Pretty makes sense, doesn't it? Well, that's what he's saying about the nation of Babylon. That's what Isaiah is saying about the nation of Babylon. So you showed these leaders where your treasures were. You showed them all your treasures. You showed them the hiding place. You showed them the passwords to get in there. So verse 16, Isaiah said to Hezekiah, hear the word of the Lord. Behold, the days are coming when all that is in your house, and which your fathers have accumulated until this day, will be carried to Babylon. Nothing shall be left. Again, that's an interesting prophecy, and it's a good warning. You trust people who earn your trust. You just be real careful. I personally think you should lock your doors. I know some people don't lock their doors. I think people should lock their doors. I teach that to my grandson. We'll be in the car, get ready to step out, maybe to go in to get a drink in a place, Mart over there in Hawkins. And he goes, can I leave my phone in the car? I said, yeah, I'm locking the door. And we'll even put it under this blanket so people don't see it, so they don't break a window to get it. So you say, so you're telling your son to be careful? Yeah. You're telling him there's bad people out there? Yeah, I'm telling him those things. And yes, we trust God, but I also think locked doors are a good thing. And you don't show all your enemies or all your potential enemies things that you don't want known. You just don't do that. So now we talk about this lusting for power. As you turn to Revelation 14, let's go to Revelation 14. I'll spend the rest of the time reading in Revelation, but I chose to put this here early because I did not want to end with what I'm about to do. As you turn to Revelation 14, because Revelation, we're going to talk about the wealthy merchants of the world. And when you talk about Babylon, you're talking about the wealthy merchants of the world. That's the message we're going to see. And I wanted just for a little fun, I listed 12 different wealthy people, wealthy entities that can come into play. Because people say, who's Babylon? Who's Babylon today? And you can have great discussions about it. And people can have strong opinions about it, as you might. To me, Babylon is going to be anyone who projects themselves as having false gods and who loves wealth and is willing to take it. That to me is Babylon. So here's some possibilities. The first one people thought, when people read the book of Revelation years ago, they thought of the Roman Empire. They thought of Rome because the Roman Empire was indeed the powerful nation, the powerful controlling nation. I do believe the globalists are going to temporarily win. They're going to temporarily win. And so I'm listing some of the globalists right here. By the way, I think the ultimate globalist, the Father and Son, they win at the end. But before they win, Christians are going to lose some things. They're going to lose rights, they're going to lose some privileges, they're going to lose some property, they're going to lose some possessions. Some places have already been doing that for their whole life. The United States has not had those curses. They have not had those circumstances. We could easily have those circumstances if the election goes again like it is now and the way the politicians are going, the way the leaders of the world are going. They don't care about the little people. People are concerned about money and power. And that is the goal of Satan, the devil. And so people are concerned about money and power. And that's what our politicians are doing. So the first one I want to mention is the Roman Empire, because that was the one they thought of back then. They thought, when we read in Revelation here in a minute, they thought the Roman Empire was what they were talking about, because that was what they were living. I'm going to list 11 more. The next one I put down is American politicians. American politicians, they might be some of the merchants of the world, merchants of the earth, who fall into that category, and they're found in Washington, D.C. The third category is the United Nations. The United Nations is a powerful group, and they may be trying to control things as a globalist, and they may have their rug pulled out from under them. Number 4 is NATO. NATO, and that's found in Brussels, Belgium. NATO, again, is a powerful entity, and they may be weeping and gnashing for when their power is pulled away. Number 5 is BRICS. I think it's Brazil, I can't remember what it all stands for, Russia, India, South Africa, and China. That's what BRICS stands for. Their headquarters is in Shanghai, China. They've been trying to recruit others, and they may get to recruit others. I'm just showing you the potential of people who are going to be weeping and crying when the rug's pulled out from underneath them. Number 6 is the World Economic Forum, which is headquarters in Davos, Switzerland. These are control freaks as well who are trying to control and manipulate things, and they'll be successful for a while. Who knows how successful any of these 6 will be, but finally they will lose their power too. The seventh one is the British monarchy. The British monarchy, Buckingham Palace, a lot of wealth, and very powerful people with a lot of control. And these people with these kind of power, they'd like to control the world. And sooner or later, they're going to be weeping and gnashing their teeth. The next one's the Saudi Arabia monarchy. The Saudi Arabian monarchy. The next one is the Japanese monarchy in Tokyo, Japan. The next one is the Chinese oligarchs in Beijing. They're not as well known. Actually, a lot of the Japanese monarchy is not as well known. But again, just do a little research, you can see how many there are and how long they've been around. The Chinese oligarchs, they got a lot of millionaires, which is really, for not being a capitalistic nation, there are people who are millionaires over there, more than I was aware. The next one's the European oligarchs, and I lumped Moscow and Kiev together, because even though Russia and Ukraine are fighting, they're cut from the same cloth. I don't view either one of them as righteous over the other. I believe they're going for money, they're going for power, they're going for what they're going to do. And so I lumped those European oligarchs in together. And then last one, the 12th one, is the Catholic hierarchy, which is found at the Vatican. I just listed 12. Again, I didn't want to end with that, because I want to end with the scripture. But I did want to introduce that, and you can come up with your own list. You can add to that list. The point we're about to read, that the world is going to weep when Babylon falls. The world is going to weep when Babylon falls. And I'm telling you, all 6 of those are going to weep when Babylon falls. And you can sit there and say, well, Dave, you only gave us 12. There could be 30. Absolutely, there can be 30. The number can be as large as it needs to be. So if people say, well, is Babylon one little entity? No, Babylon's not one little entity. It's a system. It's a system of people who are trying to control. They want power and money. And God's letting it go on, and now they're really been trying to tighten the screws. They're trying to power and control through these technology. I mean, interesting with these technology, like my son was saying the other day, he stopped at a store, kind of like Lowe's, stopped at a store like Lowe's. And as he drove by the store, he got an ad, came up on his phone. Just because he had been there, so that they knew he was there, so they know where you are at, they know where you shop. So an ad came up because you're there. Hey, do you want to come in? Do you want to spend money here? It's just amazing what power we've given away and how bad it's gotten. And, of course, that's the battle going on all the way back to the Patriot Act, all the way back to George Bush, who I had greater appreciation for him, and I realized I didn't like his involvement in the Patriot Act. But that's a horse of a different color. So let's read now. Let's spend the rest of the time reading. Revelation 14, verse 8. We read it already. Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Her fornication, false gods, fornicating with false gods, fornicating to get money, loving money, making money their goal. Revelation 16, verse 19. Revelation 16, verse 19. Now the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. I'm saying God is upset with American politicians. I'm saying God is upset with the United Nations and NATO and BRISC and World Economic Forum and the British monarchy and Saudi monarchy and the Japanese monarchy and the Chinese oligarchs and the European oligarchs. And unfortunately, I think he's upset with the leadership of the Catholic Church. He may be enjoying the Catholics who are practicing their faith and have a relationship with him, but I don't think God's happy about many hierarchies of people trying to control others. So let's look at Revelation chapter 17, verse 5. And on her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, of the abominations of the earth. See, this Babylon is bad news. No matter, even if it appears to do good things, even if it appears to do service projects, even if it appears to help the poor, Babylon is bad news. Verse 6, I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, drunk with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Babylon is not supporting believers. They sometimes may do good service projects, but as far as deep down of their heart and deep down of their goal, they're not serving the Lord. They're not serving the Father and the Son. Verse 9, here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. So people say, who's Babylon? Well, it's not just one entity. I'm not even going to project who the 7 heads are. I'm not even going to project who the 10 nations are. I don't have to worry about that. I mean, I'll look at it, but I gave you 12 entities that can be. And anyone who's ripping off, anyone who's immersed in a false god, and everyone who's trying to steal money from human beings and try to crush the little ones, that is not of God. What this world is, this world has people who are trying to control others and try to rip people off. That's what this world is. Not everyone. In fact, it's really refreshing to see individuals who live a good way of life. That's why I like this congregation, because you live a good way of life. I like other believers in East Texas. I like some of the people in the other churches of God. I have great Baptist friends who are living a good life. I have Pentecostal friends who live a good life, and I trust them, and they're nice people. And someone says, do you focus? I focus on what we have in common. And again, and some of the people that I used to go to church with are not really nice people. They're rude people. They can be rude. Be rude to whoever you want to be rude to. That's their business, not mine. The point is, God's way is good, and we want to follow God's way. Systems stink. Religious systems stink. They can be helpful, they can be beneficial, but they also get in the way. Verse 12. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as of yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. So again, I don't know who the 10 horns are. First of all, you'll know for sure in the last hour. So all the speculating before the last hour is that. It's just speculating. When you see it in the last hour, then it becomes obvious. And I just gave you some examples of entities, of groups, people in groups who are trying to. It's real simple. Are they worshiping God, and are they loving their neighbor? Are they producing freedom, or are they trying to control us? It's really quite simple when you look at it that way. Now you say, but the whole world's in the money system. Yes. The whole world's in the control system. Yes. But not every individual. Not every individual. I married a person who's not that way. I have friends like sitting in this audience who aren't that way. And it's great to be around people like that, who are not part of the beast system, who are not part of the Babylonian system. Really great to be around people like that. Chapter 18, let's look at a few verses here. Chapter 18, verses 2 and 3. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, has become a dwelling place of demons and prison for every foul spirit and cage of every unclean and hated bird. It is my opinion. I didn't come up with this. I agree with people who say this. I believe there are a lot of people walking around who are demon-possessed, espousing things that are so abnormal, so unchristian, so hurtful, so illogical. And you say, well, it's not my place to try to fight them or anything. I watch good ideas and I listen. I hear good ideas and I hear bad ideas. But I understand that this is a spiritual war going on in our country. It's a spiritual war going on in our world. And we don't have to be afraid. We hide behind Christ. As I always say, hide behind Christ. Just keep doing the right thing. Just keep doing the right thing and let God take care of the rest. Probably if we saw how, it's kind of like what it was Elisha, when he saw how the enemy was, and God had to show him the host of angels. I think we'd be scared to death if we saw how much the enemy's lurking around. But we'd be greatly encouraged if we knew how much the helpful ones are there with us, which we need to focus on that. But anyway, the world's it's gone mad. It's gone absolutely crazy. And we see that here, we see it in our lives. Verse 9. The kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her when they see the smoke of her burning. There's a lot of pedophiles running in the world. A lot of rich people are pedophiles. A lot of powerful people are pedophiles. I think we'd be shocked if we knew. I'd be totally blown away. Probably people that I admire from a distance, I would be totally shocked if I knew what they were living like. But I think the child trafficking thing's a huge problem around the world. I think it's a huge problem with our leadership in our country. And again, people are committing fornication and they're just living luxuriously. And when it falls, when the consequences come, people are going to be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Verse 10, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour your judgment has come. So bad things will keep happening until the time of judgment comes. And he talks about the 1 hour period, showing that there'll be a period of time which God's judgment will come. Verses 11 through 21, the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. Merchandise, gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of most precious wood, bronze, iron, and marble, cinnamon and incense, fragrant oil and frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour, wheat and cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and bodies and souls of men. The food of your soul long for has gone from you, and all the things which are rich and splendid have gone from you, and you shall find them no more at all. The people who are caught in that lifestyle are going to be totally wiped out. I mean, even now when people lose their wealth, they kill themselves. Sometimes they even kill their families, which is really despicable, horrible. I mean, you can feel sorry for people who have lost everything, but it's because they've expected so much. They've played the system, they've expected so much. Many in the world, like us here and like many of the people I see around the country, they don't have a lot. And they don't have that lust. Again, you get the bite for that lust. That can be a horrible thing. Verse 15, the merchants of these things who became rich by her will stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, Oh, alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen, purple and scarlet. She was adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour such great riches came to nothing. The shipmaster, all who traveled by sea, and sailors, and as many as trade on the sea, stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning. What happened to this great city? What happened to her? And they threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing and saying, Alas, alas, that great city in which all who had ships of the sea became rich by her wealth. But in 1 hour she became desolate. Verse 20, Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you of her. Then a mighty angel took up a stone with a great millstone and threw it in the sea, saying, Thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down and shall not be found any more. The sound of harpists, musicians, flautists, and trumpeters shall not be heard in you any more. No craftsman of any craft shall be found in you any more, and the sound of a millstone shall not be heard in you any more. The light of a lamp shall not shine in you any more, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you any more. For your merchants were the great men of the earth. And that's why I wanted to give you earlier 12 entities that could qualify as the great people of the earth. Great by man's standards, great by financial standards, but not great by God's standards. People who need God's blessing, people who need God's forgiveness, people who need salvation, people who we may someday get to help. But if they're immersed in that system, when the system crashes, it's going to be horrible for them. For your merchants were great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. There's a lot of sorcery going on, there's a lot of witchcraft going on, there's a lot of demonism going on. And you may not recognize it, or I may not recognize it, because we're trying to stay close to the Bible. So we're staying away from that stuff. We want the shield of God around us so we can stay away from that stuff. But I think when you read the news of how many people are suffering from what's going on, it's a sad thing. Verse 24, and in her was found the blood of prophets and saints and all who were slain on the earth. Well, anyway, that's the end of my presentation tonight. The fact is Babylon is going to fall. It's going to fall. When it does, I hope we're close to God. I hope that we're happy that evil goes away, and we can, when bad times come, we can stay close to God and realize that the book of Revelation has many good promises after this tremendous event that's going to be a horrible event for mankind. Mankind who is locked in to Satan's system, is going to be devastating for them. And they may be angry, and they may try to hurt people. But we just have to stay close to God for our own spirits, close to God for our people around us, and maybe we can help other people through these bad times. Okay, Dixon's got a song by Ross Parker and Huey Charles entitled We'll Meet Again. Thank you, Dixon. What a nice, happy song. We'll bow our heads. Our loving Father in heaven, we thank you so much for your calling. We thank you so much for the strength you give us through the power of your Spirit, by your active love of forgiving us, to empower us to try to be more like you. We appreciate when you love us even when we make mistakes, and you help us to learn from those mistakes. And that way we also learn to be kind to other people, because when you bless us, we can bless others. When we can be patient, when you're patient with us, we can be patient with others. We appreciate all that. We want very much to reflect a way of happiness and peace, but we have to deal with the reality of what's out there, and your promises are true. Your prophecy is true. We don't understand every detail of it, but we talk about it amongst ourselves, and we focus on the good blessings and the good conclusions that you have for us. So we ask your dismissal. We ask you to be with those who are sick, be with those who are suffering, loss. And we ask you to be with us, and we come together again on the Sabbath. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.